Good morning to everyone at St. Paul's here in Kekaha. Today I'm going to talk about the keys of the kingdom that you heard about in today's gospel. We'll trace what those keys meant in the early Christian church and that they mean something quite different today. The notion of both church-wide and personal responsibility. Today's gospel talks about an event in the life of Jesus that has caused a lot of speculation over the years. Jesus said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Peter has been credited with becoming the leader of the movement that Jesus founded, and then his leadership passed on to his successors. Eventually, that leadership became known as the papacy, with claims of all authority on matters spiritual and eventually matters quite temporal, quite earthly as well. So Christianity ran with those keys tucked neatly in its knapsack. Now, that knapsack eventually wound up in Rome until October 31st, 1517. That's the alleged day a priest by the name of Martin Luther, an Augustinian monk, tacked up his 95 theses on the door of a church in Wittenberg, Germany. Those theses were Luther's opinion about where the church had gone astray. The church called Luther and his followers heretics. But in the last number of years, Luther has been seen more as a hero by even Catholic scholars as their church opened windows under Pope St. John the 23rd and now under Pope Francis. By virtue of those keys being in just one place for 1,500 years, with the claim of absolute authority, did the Christian church do all the things that Jesus called for? When you think about the Inquisition, the Crusades, the index of forbidden books, the burning at the stake of those who dared to translate the Bible into the language of the people, and the interpretation of the infallibility of the Pope in the 19th century, one kind of wonders, huh? And I believe it safe to say that on October 31st, 1517, the vault that contained those keys was opened. And when it was opened that day, lots of copies of those keys to the kingdom of heaven were made and distributed to all the churches that sprang from the Reformation. Which is the best church? That's disputed. You know, earlier this year, I attended an ecumenical pastoral seminar in Texas. And after the first day's conference, I was sitting in the hotel lobby reading the newspaper. I overheard three clergymen discussing which religion was best. And the Episcopal priest said, "Well, mine's the best. We've got women in the ministry now." And the Catholic priest said, "Ain't possible. Mine's the best, we's the biggest." And the Baptist minister said, "Hey, you're both busted your britches wrong. Mine's the best." And the other two asked, "Why?" And the Baptist preacher said, "Hey, after all, they didn't call him John the Presbyterian, did they?" And, you know, the challenges of each church are the same. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. But what does all that mean? What are the keys of which Jesus speaks? For the majority of Christians in the world, the keys are not contrived doctrines and irrelevant church policies and practices and laws that sprung up later as absolutes and that confuse and separate Christians rather than lift them up to the glory of God. Instead, the keys are a metaphor for gospel teachings, the teachings of Jesus. And the metaphor continues. Those keys are to be proclaimed. Proclaim those keys, those messages of the gospel to the world by your words and your actions, if you will succeed in binding others to Jesus. Those who reject or loosen themselves from the teachings of Jesus and live a life outside the expectations and opportunities God has given to all of us have made their own choices about their life after death. As you can see, our responsibility is huge. Please never blow it, like the guy in this humorous story did. It seems that on a really busy street one day, a lady was being tailgated by a really stressed out man. Well, the light turned yellow just in front of her. She probably could have beaten the impending red light by flooring it, but she did the right thing. She stopped at the crosswalk. Now, the tailgating man was furious. He laid on the horn. He screamed and cursed in frustration, and he raised his middle finger. He had missed his chance to get through the intersection. He dropped his cell phone, his donut, and his cup of coffee. Well, while he was still ranting and raving, he heard a tap on his window. He looked up and saw a very serious police officer. "Get out of the car, sir. Keep your hands where I can see them. Turn around and lay your hands on the hood of the car." After he handcuffed him, he put him in the back of the police car and drove him to the police station, where he was searched and fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. After a couple of hours, a policeman opened his cell door and he took the guy back to the booking desk. Well, the arresting officer was standing there with his personal effects. He said, "Yeah, I'm sorry for this mistake. You see, I pulled up behind your car while you were blowing your horn, flipping off the lady in front of you, and cussing a blue streak at her. Then I noticed the 'What Would Jesus Do' bumper sticker, the 'Choose Life' license plate holder, the 'Follow Me to Sunday School' bumper sticker, and the chrome-plated Christian fish emblem on the trunk of your car. Naturally, I had assumed you had stolen the car." Well, those of you who are lawyers may spot some probable cause issues here and perhaps even a lawsuit against the city. And I'm sure this never really happened. But how often have you and I compromised our Christian faith like that and not taken the responsibility for it that Jesus asks of us? One thing we can't do is leave this church this morning without realizing that the Episcopal Church carries a set of those keys. And even further, St. Paul's here in Kekaha carries a set of those keys. And look in your wallet or your purse. You'll find your own set of keys there too. Why? Because when you walk out that door shortly, you are stepping into a world of people who want to know more than anything that there is a very loving and forgiving God right there, right here with us. The institutions that are ingrained in our lives, such as schools, governments, politicians, like Facebook, emails, Twitter, TV, and the abundance of protest groups, they can't do that. The keys our church has, the keys you have, are the keys that Jesus gave to us so that we will use them to unlock God's grace and mercy and forgiveness to all people whom we encounter. Take those keys, those responsibilities, and really, really run with them. God bless you.